Not because she misses you, because she's trying to remember why she let you matter. She's rereading old texts at 2 in the morning, reconstructing conversations in her mind, rewriting the ending where she had more control. She's asking her friends if they've seen you around, if you've mentioned her name, if you look different now. And here's the part that's going to shift everything for you. None of this is about love. It's about the fact that you disappeared before she could finish the story she was telling herself about who you were supposed to be. Time doesn't heal wounds when someone walks away with dignity. It deepens questions. It creates a void where certainty used to live. And the longer you stay silent, the louder that void becomes. Because silence isn't passive. Silence is the most aggressive form of presence you can have in someone's mind when they are used to your attention, your validation, your predictable responses. When you remove yourself completely, you don't just leave space. You create psychological pressure. And that pressure doesn't fade. It builds. Let me be clear about what we're actually talking about here. This isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation or revenge or trying to hurt someone who hurt you. This is about understanding a fundamental truth that most men never grasp. Your absence, when chosen consciously and maintained with discipline, is infinitely more powerful than your presence ever was when it was given freely without boundaries. The man who chases, who explains, who tries to convince her he's valuable, that man has already lost. Not because he's weak, but because he's operating from a position of deficiency. He's trying to fill a gap in someone else's perception of him instead of building something so solid within himself that her perception becomes irrelevant. If you're still here, if something in what I just said landed differently than the surface level advice you've been consuming, then stay. Because what we're building in this space isn't a quick fix or a tactic. It's a framework for becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to manage how other people see him because he's too busy building the life that makes their opinions background noise. And if that's the direction you're moving in, subscribe now. Not for me, for you. Because you're choosing to be part of a community that values truth over comfort, clarity over confusion, and discipline over distraction. This is where you draw the line between who you were and who you're becoming. Now let's go deeper into what's actually happening when you stay away. Most men think walking away means she forgets, that she moves on quickly, finds someone else, and your value drops to zero in her mind. That's the fear, right? That if you're not there reminding her of your worth, she'll stop seeing it altogether. But that fear is rooted in a misunderstanding of how human psychology actually works. People don't forget what they had access to and lost. They obsess over it. They reconstruct it. They idealize it in ways that were never true when it was right in front of them. And the reason is simple. The human mind hates unfinished business. It hates ambiguity. It hates not having control over an outcome it thought it could predict. When you were always available, always responsive, always trying to make things work, you gave her the gift of certainty. She knew where you stood. She knew what you'd tolerate. She knew that no matter what she did, you'd still be there, still trying, still hoping. And certainty, when it's given without her having to earn it, becomes boring. It loses value, not because she's a bad person, but because humans are wired to assign value based on scarcity, effort, and mystery. When you remove yourself, you don't just take away your presence. You take away her ability to predict you. You take away her sense of control, and that creates a crisis in her mind that she can't resolve by simply moving on. Here's the misconception. You think she'll replace you, that she'll find someone better, someone who doesn't walk away, someone who gives her the attention you're withholding. And maybe she will try. Maybe she'll go out, post more, talk to other people, do everything she can to signal that she's fine. But here's what's really happening beneath that surface behavior. Every interaction she has with someone new is being measured against the version of you that now exists in her mind. Not the real you, the one she took for granted, but the idealized you that absence creates. Because when you're not there, she can't reality check her memories. She can't remind herself of the things that annoyed her, the moments you weren't perfect, the reasons she convinced herself it wasn't working. All she has is the highlight reel. And longer you're gone, the better that reel gets. But let's address the hard truth that most men avoid. This only works if you're actually gone. Not physically absent while emotionally obsessing, not silent on the surface while stalking her social media, asking mutual friends about her, checking to see if she's watching your stories. That's not absence. That's weak presence. That's you pretending to have moved on while still being entirely controlled by her. And she will sense that. Women are extraordinarily perceptive when it comes to detecting inauthenticity. If you're silent but still orbiting her world, she knows. And the power you think you're building by staying away evaporates the moment she realizes you're still mentally tethered to her. Real absence requires real detachment. And real detachment isn't something you perform, it's something you become. It's not a strategy you execute for 3 weeks to see if she reaches out. It's a fundamental shift in how you see yourself, your time, your energy, and your future. It's the recognition that whether she comes back or not is irrelevant compared to the man you're building while she's gone. Because if you walk away just to get a reaction, you're still in her frame. You're still making her the center of your decisions. And the moment she senses that, the moment she realizes your absence is just a tactic, you lose all the ground you thought you were gaining. So what does real absence look like? It looks like you genuinely not caring if she ever reaches out again. Not because you're bitter or angry, but because you've redirected all the energy you were pouring into her back into yourself. It looks like you training harder, working smarter, building deeper friendships with people who actually add value to your life. It looks like you pursuing goals that existed before she did and will exist long after she's gone. It looks like you becoming so focused on your own growth that her name doesn't even come up in your internal dialogue anymore. That's when absence becomes powerful. Not when it's a move you're making on a chessboard, but when it's the natural byproduct of a man who has better things to do than wait for someone to realize his worth. And here's what happens when you reach that state. She feels it. Not because you told her, not because you posted something cryptic or tried to make her jealous, but because energy travels. Because when a man genuinely stops needing validation from a woman, when he stops checking to see if she's checking, when he stops living in the past and starts building a future that doesn't include her, that shift is palpable, and it creates a disturbance in her reality that she can't ignore. Because now you're not just absent, you're unreachable. And unreachable is terrifying to someone who thought they had you figured out. Let's paint a picture of what this man actually looks like. Not the cliche, not the Hollywood version of the mysterious loner who broods in the corner and somehow has women falling at his feet. I'm talking about the real version, the grounded version, the psychologically healthy version. This is a man who wakes up with a clear sense of purpose that has nothing to do with anyone else's opinion of him. His mornings aren't dictated by who texted him or who didn't. He's not scrolling through his phone looking for validation before his feet hit the floor. He's moving with intention. Gym, work, personal projects, meaningful conversations with people who challenge him to grow. He's not performing growth for an audience. He's living it because it's who he's decided to be. This man doesn't talk about how over it he is. He doesn't need to. His actions speak. He's not posting vague quotes about moving on or being unbothered. He's not in anyone's comments trying to remind them he exists. He's building in silence. And when he does show up in social spaces, it's not strategic. It's organic. He's sharing things that matter to him, not things designed to get a reaction from someone specific. And people notice, not just her, everyone. Because there's a gravitational pull that comes from a man who's genuinely content with his own company, who doesn't need external validation to feel whole. When this man does interact with women, it's different. There's no neediness, no hidden agenda, no sense that he's auditioning for approval. He's present but not dependent, interested but not attached. And that creates a dynamic that's magnetic because it's rare. Most men are either too available or too detached in a way that feels performative. This man is neither. He's simply solid, and solid doesn't beg. Solid doesn't chase. Solid doesn't break silence to check if someone's thinking about him. Solid just is. And that isness does more work than any text you could send ever would. Now let's talk about what she's experiencing while you're becoming this version of yourself. At first, she might feel relief. Finally, she thinks he's stopped being so intense. He stopped trying to fix things. He's giving her space. And in that space, she assumes she'll find clarity. She'll figure out what she really wants. She'll either miss you or she won't. And either way, she'll move forward. But that's not what happens, because the space you're giving her isn't neutral. It's loaded. Every day you don't reach out is another day she has to sit with the question, why hasn't he reached out? And at first, she might answer that question with easy narratives. He's hurt. He's playing games. He's trying to make me jealous. He'll crack soon. But days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into a month. And you still haven't cracked. You haven't sent the late night text. You haven't liked the photo she posted specifically hoping you'd see. You haven't asked a mutual friend how she's doing. And now the easy narratives stop working. Now she's forced to consider a harder possibility. Maybe he really is done. Maybe he's not playing a game. Maybe he's actually moved on. And that possibility is destabilizing in a way she didn't expect, because as long as she thought you were still emotionally invested, she had control. She could always come back if she wanted to. She could always test the waters, reach out, see if you were still there. But if you're actually gone emotionally, mentally, spiritually, then she's lost something she didn't realize she still wanted to keep as an option. This is where the unraveling begins, not in some dramatic visible breakdown, but in the quiet moments, when she's alone at night and her mind drifts to you, when she sees something that reminds her of an inside joke you had, when she hears a song you used to play, when she's with someone new and realizes they don't make her feel the way you did. Not because you were perfect, but because the version of you that exists in her. Memory now is untouchable. It's idealized. It's frozen in the best moments, stripped of the flaws she used to focus on. And she can't compete with that version of you by finding someone else, because that version only exists in your absence. She starts to second guess us herself. Did I make the wrong choice? Was he actually better than I gave him credit for? Why isn't he fighting for this? And these questions don't come with clear answers. They just loop. They create mental noise that she can't turn off. And the more she tries to distract herself, the louder the noise gets. Because distraction only works when the thing you're avoiding isn't tied to your sense of self, but you were tied to her sense of self. You were part of the story she was telling about who she was, what she deserved, where her life was going. And when you removed yourself from that story, without warning, without explanation, without giving her the closure she thought she was entitled to, you left a plot hole she can't fill. Here's where most men mess it up. They sense this shift. Maybe she reaches out. Maybe she sends a casual text, something low stakes, something designed to test if you're still there. And because you've been waiting for this, because you've been hoping she'd crack first, you respond immediately. You're friendly. You're warm. You open the door wide, thinking this is your chance to get back in. And in that moment, you undo everything, because now she knows. She knows you were just waiting. She knows the absence wasn't real. She knows she still has control, and the unraveling stops. The tension releases, and you're right back where you started, available, predictable, and powerless. The move here, the only move that maintains the frame you've built, is to stay consistent. If she reaches out, you respond like someone who's genuinely busy living a life that doesn't revolve around her. You're polite but brief. You're not cold, but you're not warm either. You don't ask questions that invite long conversations. You don't give her the emotional supply she's fishing for. You treat the interaction the same way you treat a message from someone you used to know but have no investment in anymore. And that neutrality, that lack of eagerness, tells her everything she needs to know. You really have moved on. And that realization hits harder than anything you could say. Let's get practical for a moment, because understanding the psychology is one thing. Living it is another. If you're in a situation right now where you've just walked away, or you're thinking about walking away, here's what you need to do immediately. Delete her number. Not to be petty, not to prove a point, but to remove the temptation to reach out in a moment of weakness. Unfollow her on social media. Not because you hate her, but because you can't detach if you're still watching her life unfold in real time. Every story you watch, every post you see is a breadcrumb that keeps you emotionally tethered. Cut the cord completely. Next, and this is non-negotiable, fill the space she occupied with something real. Not another woman, not a distraction, but something that builds you. A new training program, a business idea you've been putting off, a skill you've always wanted to develop, a book that challenges the way you think, a friendship that pushes you to be better. The goal isn't to forget her. The goal is to create a life so compelling that she becomes a footnote in a much larger story. And that only happens if you're intentional about what you're building in her absence. And here's the shift that most men never make. Stop measuring progress by whether she comes back. That's the wrong metric. The right metric is whether you're becoming someone who wouldn't take her back unless she's proven she's worthy of the man you're becoming. Because if you walk away just to get her to chase and then you accept her back without any real change in the dynamic, you've wasted your time. You've taught her that your boundaries are negotiable, that your absence is a bluff, and that she can repeat the same behavior and still have access to you. That's not power. That's a loop you'll be stuck in until you finally break it for good. So, When and if she comes back, and she very well might, your response can't be relief. It can't be gratitude. It has to be discernment. You have to ask yourself, is this person adding to the life I'm building, or is she a distraction from it? Is she coming back because she's genuinely grown and sees the value in what we could build together? Or is she coming back because I'm no longer available and that scarcity triggered her ego? You have to be honest about that. And if the answer is the latter, if she's just reacting to your absence and hasn't done any real internal work, then letting her back in is a mistake. It's choosing short-term validation over long-term respect, and you're better than that. Here's the part that separates the men who transform from the men who just repeat the same cycles with different women. This process isn't about her. It never was. It's about you deciding that your time, your energy, your presence, these are premium resources that not everyone gets access to. It's about you realizing that walking away isn't a loss. It's a filter. It removes people who don't value what you bring. And it creates space for people who do. And if she's the kind of woman who only sees your value after you're gone, then she's not the kind of woman who deserves to be part of what you're building. Let time do its work. Not because you're sitting back passively hoping she'll change her mind, but because you're using that time to become someone who doesn't need her to. You're letting the days stack into weeks, the weeks into months, and you're filling every single one of those days with actions that make you sharper, stronger, clearer. You're not waiting for her to unravel. You're building something so solid that whether she unravels or not becomes irrelevant. And that's the ultimate form of power, not needing the outcome you once thought you needed because you've created something better in its absence. This is who you are now. Not the man who chases, not the man who